Hello everybody, my name is Sat Sindhar. I'm the MD here at People HR, and I want to talk to you about a really exciting new feature that's coming up in the next release. And this is the Time package. The Time package is going to be available in the Pro version of the software. And as you can see here, one of the options that it's going to give you is the ability to capture clock in and clock out times in a variety of different ways. I'm going to go through all of those. What it's worth mentioning here is that you don't have to stick with just one option for all of your employees. You can actually mix and match. And what that will give you the ability to do is, if there's a group of employees who are working, say, off-site, is to use one option, and if there's a group of employees who are working in the office, then use that particular option. So let's go through the different options which are available. On the day of the release, what we'll actually do is we'll send you out a notification with a link to each option in quite a lot of detail so you can experiment for yourself. Okay. So the first option is Timesheets, and you might actually be familiar with Timesheets. Timesheets gives you the ability to allow employees to track their project hours. So it's absolutely ideal in a scenario where you want employees to record their own time, you want to allocate it against a particular project or client or task. You want to be able to analyze that information, and you can do that using the query tool. And you may want to even send that data to payroll. So a good example of data that goes to payroll from a timesheet is overtime, or there may be some events like stopover or sleep-ins and those type of things. Okay. So just to summarize, timesheets, it's absolutely ideal for project time. You can even give control to particular projects, so employees can only access the ones that they're supposed to do. And employees themselves can record the start and end times or just the durations. Okay. The key thing about project timesheets is that the time is validated by the authorizer. Okay. So once an employee fills in the timesheet, they hit the submit button, the authorizer gets a message, and they're able to approve it. The next option is new within this particular release, and that's QR codes. So QR codes, you may have seen them on particular adverts or side of some packaging. What a QR code is, a unique code that identifies back to a mobile phone a code. So what the system will allow you to do now is to actually go in and create a QR code and link that to a location and actually link it to a geofence. And I'll explain why the geofence is important in a moment. What an employee can then do is go along to the QR code, show their phone to the QR code, and that will clock them in and clock them out. So that's going to record the location. It's going to record the exact date and time of the scan. And with the geofence, you can make sure that that QR code can only be scanned within that particular radius. So that stops somebody taking a photograph of a QR code, printing their own, and doing that from home, for example. Okay. And the great thing about QR code scanning is that you can actually send that data to payroll as well, run your analysis reports, and actually look at shift variances. For example, if somebody was supposed to start at 9, but they started at 9:30, then you can have a late start, for example. So QR codes are quite useful in scenarios where you've got a mobile workforce who may be going out to sites and you haven't got the ability to install any hardware at those sites, but you want to know when the employees arrive and when they leave that site. So it's a really useful way of doing that. The next option, which has already been in the software but it's worth mentioning here, is central tap in and central tap out. So what this is a piece of software that we have that runs on an iPad or on an iPhone, and you can install that and stick it in reception, for argument's sake, and what that will do is allow employees to clock in and clock out using a simple code. And that will record accurately the time that the employee arrives and the time that the employee leaves, and you can again send that data to payroll or do some analysis on there. So tap in, tap out is really useful where you don't want to buy any specialist hardware. You want to set something up in reception. It's really easy to get started with. All you need is an iPad or an old iPhone. You can download the software, get it connected, and away it goes. So useful approach is if you have lots of retail outlets, for example, you can stick an old iPad into those retail outlets and get started straight away. The next option is personal tap in and tap out. Again, this has always been in the mobile application, but we made a slight change, which I'll explain here. So Personal tap in and tap out is available to employees from their mobile app, and what it allows them to do is click on the tap in or the tap out button, and it will record the date, the time, and of course the location as well, and it uses the phone's coordinates to record the location. You can also set it so that it clocks in and clocks out automatically based upon a particular geofence area. So that's an employee preference now. They can simply say, when I arrive in the office, I just want you to clock me in, and when I leave the office, I just want you to clock me out. Now, combined with the geofence, it means that you cannot clock in or clock out unless you're within the particular radius of the geofence. So that's quite useful to be able to say that I know the employee actually clocked in because they were within this particular location. So it's ideal for allowing employees to keep track of their own time, and you can validate that through reports, and again you can use that in analysis reports, or you can send it across to payroll as well. The next option is new, which is an integration into clock machines. So we developed the software now so that you can actually implement AMVIS clocks, and AMVIS clocks can use fingerprint detection, they can use face, or just a simple card or code. And what we will actually do is we will collect the data from the clocks which are on your site and bring it into the People HR system. So employees can clock in and clock out. It records the date, time, and the location, and is very accurate data. So it's ideal for hourly paid employees where you need to know up to the minute of, for their arrival times and for their leave times. And there's a really nice report called the Timesheet report, which collates all of that data, shows the shift variances, tells you what the normal hours are, what the overtime hours are, and it can send it to all of the popular payroll packages as well. The next option is again new, which is beacons. So beacons are a piece of technology which relies on a Bluetooth beacon, which is not big, it's the size of a 50p coin or a small coin, and you can stick that in your office. And what actually happens is, if you've allowed employees to use beacons to clock in and clock out, is when they come into the range of the beacon, it will clock them in, and when they go out of the range of the beacons, it will clock them out. So it's an ideal solution where you just want to know if employees are within the office or whether they're not in the office. One of the shortcomings of beacons is that it relies on the phone telling the system when the beacon is no longer active. And one of the things that the phones do is they don't detect a deactivation of the beacon immediately. It can sometimes take several minutes. So it's not a good approach to get up to the minute arrival and departure times for employees. If you want to do that, you're better off using things like the clocking machines or the QR codes, but it's a really useful option to see if an employee arrived at work, what time they arrived at work roughly, and what time they left as well. Okay. So that's the different options in the time package. There's some really great features. You've got to pick the right one for the group of employees, and we do allow you to create a group of employees and say that they'll be using beacons. This group of employees will be able to use the clock in, clock out with the devices. Once you've done that, then the system will happily collect the time for you. You can process that, you can produce reports from it, or you can send it on to payroll. So what we'll be doing over the next few days as the release happens, it will send you detailed release notes, which will have a link to an article and a video specifically explaining how each of the features works. Thank you for joining me.